and welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis. Today's subject is evil. From Sri Aurobindo in The Life Divine, it is sometimes reasoned that as truth and good have their absolutes, so falsehood and evil must also have their absolutes, or, if it is not so, then both must belong to the relativity only. Knowledge and ignorance, truth and falsehood, good and evil exist only in relation to each other, and beyond the dualities here, they have no existence. But this is not the fundamental truth of the relation of these opposites. For in the first place, falsehood and evil are, unlike truth and good, very clearly results of the ignorance, and cannot exist where there is no ignorance. They can have no self-existence in the divine being. They cannot be native elements of the supreme nature. If then the limited knowledge, which is the nature of ignorance, renounces its limitations, if ignorance disappears into knowledge, evil and falsehood can no longer endure, for both are fruits of unconsciousness and wrong consciousness. And if true or whole consciousness is there, replacing ignorance, they have no longer any basis for their existence. There can, therefore, be no absolute of falsehood, no absolute of evil. These things are a byproduct of the world movement. The somber flowers of falsehood and suffering and evil have their root in the black soil of the inconscient. On the other hand, there is no such intrinsic obstacle to the absoluteness of truth and good. The relativity of truth and error, good and evil, is a fact of our experience, but it is similarly a byproduct. It is not a permanent factor native to existence, for it is true only of the valuations made by the human consciousness, true only of our partial knowledge and partial ignorance. Again, of good and evil, it can be said that one exists by true consciousness, the other survives only by wrong consciousness. If there is an unmixed true consciousness, good alone can exist. It is no longer mixed with evil or formed in its presence. Human values of good and evil, as of truth and error, are indeed uncertain and relative. What is held as truth in one place or time is held in another place or time to be error. What is regarded as good is elsewhere or in other times regarded as evil. We find, too, that what we call evil results in good. What we call good results in evil. But this untoward outcome of good producing evil is due to the confusion and mixture of knowledge and ignorance, to the penetration of true consciousness by wrong consciousness, so that there is an ignorant, or mistaken application of our good, or it is due to the intervention of afflicting forces. In the opposite case of evil producing good, the happier and contradictory result is due to the intervention of some true consciousness and force acting behind and in spite of wrong consciousness and wrong will, or it is due to the intervention of redressing forces. This relativity, this mixture, is a circumstance of human mentality and the workings of the cosmic force in human life. It is not the fundamental truth of good and evil. It might be objected that physical evil, such as pain and most bodily suffering, is independent of knowledge and ignorance, of right and wrong consciousness, inherent in physical nature, but fundamentally all pain and suffering are the result of an insufficient consciousness force in the surface being, which makes it unable to deal rightly with self and nature, or unable to assimilate and to harmonize itself with the contacts of the universal energy. They would not exist if in us there were an integral presence of the luminous consciousness and the divine force of an integral being. Therefore, the relation of truth to falsehood, of good to evil, is not a mutual dependence, but is in the nature of a contradiction as of light and shadow. A shadow depends on light for its existence, but light does not depend for its existence on the shadow. The relation between the Absolute and these contraries of some of its fundamental aspects is not that they are opposite fundamental aspects of the Absolute. Falsehood and evil have no fundamentality, no power of infinity or external being, no self-existence, even by latency in the self-existent, no authenticity of an original inherence. There are forces, and subliminal experience seems to show that there are supraphysical beings embodying those forces, that are attached in their root nature to ignorance, to darkness of consciousness, to misuse of force, to perversity of delight, to all the causes and consequences of the things that we call evil. These powers, beings, or forces are active to impose their adverse constructions upon terrestrial creatures, eager to maintain their reign in the manifestation. They oppose the increase of light and truth and good, and, still more, are antagonistic to the progress of the soul towards the divine consciousness and divine existence. It is this feature of existence that we see figured in the tradition of the conflict between the powers of light and darkness, good and evil, cosmic harmony and cosmic anarchy, a tradition universal in ancient myth and in religion and common to all systems of occult knowledge. The theory of this traditional knowledge is perfectly rational and verifiable by inner experience, and it imposes itself if we admit the supraphysical and do not cabin ourselves in the acceptance of material being as the only reality. It is only by contact with conscious beings that material objects exercise powers or influences which can be called good or evil. But that good or evil is determined by the contacted being's sense of help or harm, of benefit or injury from them. These values do not belong to the material object, but to some force that uses it, or they are created by the consciousness that contacts it. Fire warms a man or burns him, but that is as involuntarily he meets it or voluntarily uses it. A medicinal herb cures or a poison kills, but the value of good or evil is brought into action by the user. It is to be observed, too, that a poison can cure as well as kill, a medicine kill or harm as well as cure or benefit. The world of pure matter is neutral, irresponsible. These values insisted on by the human being do not exist in material nature. As a superior nature transcends the duality of good and evil, so this inferior nature falls below it. The question may begin to assume a different aspect if we go behind the physical knowledge and accept the conclusions of an occult inquiry. For here we are told that there are conscious influences that attach themselves to objects, and these can be good or evil. But it might still be held that this does not affect the neutrality of the object, which does not act by an individualized consciousness, but only as it is utilized for good or for evil, or for both together. The duality of good and evil is not native to the material principle. It is absent from the world of matter. The duality begins with conscious life and emerges fully with the development of mind in life. The vital mind, the mind of desire and sensation, is the creator of the sense of evil and of the fact of evil. Moreover, in animal life, the fact of evil is there, the evil of suffering and the sense of suffering, the evil of violence and cruelty and strife and deception. But the sense of moral evil is absent. In animal life, there is no duality of sin or virtue. All action is neutral and permissible for the preservation of life and its maintenance, and for the satisfaction of the life instincts. Namaste.